Here.
Murray.
Here.
Verdehurt.
Here.
7 present.
All right, boy, roster, so. Okay, so the next thing is approval of the minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes?
All right, thank you,
Second.
Jennifer. Second, okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
One abstention because I wasn't here.
Well, all right, one abstention, so. Okay, all right, so next item on the agenda, number 2, is the fence design review. And this is a quick trip, 6510 Century Avenue. Who's gonna take it?
I can lead a quick discussion
All
about
right, all
it.
right.
This is the fence that they wish to install,
Mm-hmm,
and they wish to place it along the area on the map that's highlighted in yellow along the southern property line. It's indicating 170 feet. It's actually about a 155-foot-long section of fence. Because this is in a commercial zoning district, it requires design review by the Plan Commission. They originally wanted to, oh, that's interesting. Why is that turning, I tell you, if it involves me, it involves technology problems.
No, you
Anyway,
do really well.
no, it's okay, I have
It's better
looked at
now.
them, so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's better.
go ahead.
So they originally wanted to do chain link, and I advised them that we would not be supportive of that. So that's, the material now is going to be this, wooden material right here. So we recommend approval,
Looks nice
placement
color.
and the design.
Yeah, so it looks good, and how about, did they communicate with the neighbors?
I do not know, and I don't know if anybody's here, probably not. I don't know.
In terms of height and setback, it conforms.
It conforms, right?
Yeah, it's good to keep people happy, so. Well, any?
Is it just a wood fence? Is it
Right.
like cedar or something?
The specs are right here, or at least the, that's my understanding.
I'll move approval.
Cedar wood post.
Second.
Second,
I'll second.
let the discussion begin. They're going to cover those metal parts where they, so you're going to only see the
Trailhead.
wood, so that will be enclosed, right?
It's just as shown on this drawing here.
Yeah, it's set up enclosed from what I could tell, so.
And-
So yes, David, you are the design person. What do you think this, does this fence look good to you?
It's fine. The only thing I would ask is, why aren't we seeing the adjacent property
Yeah, that is,
again?
So what are you, you're looking
It's
for
a-
an air photo, or you're looking for a photo from the adjoining property? Is that
I'm
what you're?
looking for what's on this plan to the south?
Oh, I see.
He's trying
You're
to put it
looking
in
for
context.
Original context map.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yep, and you've asked for that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So what is to the south is a single-family residence, which is why I
They're-
advise not to do a chain link
And they're
fence.
required to put in a fence because it's commercial abutting
No,
residential?
they wanted to, they're not required to put in a fence at all. They wish to put in a fence.
And I would think if you're a neighbor of a gas station, you'd want a fence.
Yeah,
And the house is how far back from the boundary, do we know?
I can get you that information.
boy, this Google guy is amazing. So wherever he's sitting there, he answer all questions, right?
Mouse is not behaving. That's better.
We should put on the agenda for you to do a training session of what this map application is, so that, I mean, I always look at it ahead of time. It's a nice
So here's the property line along which the fence would be installed. There's often some distortion with aerial photography, which, so it's hard to tell exactly if the lot line is in the right spot or not, but the fence would be along the, as I understand it, would be along the alley behind the gas
10
station.
feet back from the boundary, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what it says, yeah.
No, that's, no, it's 10
It'd
feet.
be
It would
5 feet
start-
from the,
It would start
it'd
from
be
the
5 feet
sidewalk.
north of the
10
boundary.
foot high, I said, right.
Right.
Sorry.
So this distance is, you know, this distance to the alley looks like it's about, it's hard to see the number there. It's
14.
14 feet, yeah.
I'm assuming the neighbors don't have any objection.
We did not, there's no requirement to contact them, so I didn't. That's, you know,
Well-
the thing is, I could issue a zoning permit tomorrow for the neighbor, for the single-family resident, and they could put it up on the spot with a zoning permit and a building permit, and there would be no requirement to notify Quick Trip, so.
What would the fence look like on the side that, I think what Dave's getting at is on the side that faces the residence?
The decorative side has to face out.
Right, usually the good side's out, yeah. Decorative side, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, make both sides
They
decorative.
could.
that's probably a good idea, to make both sides decorative.
I mean, yeah, have both sides decorative, yeah, yeah.
It looks like they're doing a board on board or something like
Yeah.
that, so.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Yes, David? Anyone else? Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'm gonna call, the motion is for the fence design review. All those in favor of this say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Now we are on to concept review for proposed new hotel. Awood Hotel, 2350 Deming Way. And we got Greg Held and,
Luke stuff.
and
David,
Luke.
here's your regional context map.
Yep.
That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, they did provide one.
So you guys, well, do you want them to, you guys
I think
want to
they have a
present
I
anything?
think
or-
they have a presentation.
Do you guys have a presentation? Let's see it.
And would, yeah, I just have to go, and just so you all know that this is in the Discovery Springs, Planned Development District, and hotels, lodging is a permitted
Permitted
use
use,
within
yeah.
it.
And I would note that the future land use map draft in the
Is there anything else you want
updated
me to show,
comprehensive
or do you
plan
have-
shows this as a suburban office
There you go.
style development.
showing the.
No, yeah, click on yours, okay, and I'm gonna turn mine off, there you go.
Reference the comprehensive plan and staff.
That would be a good idea.
to work, yes.
Okay, so we're here to talk about,
What's that?
Oh, it has, yeah, I did turn it on just to see.
Can I get it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, we're here to present a concept presentation for a hotel in the Discovery Springs development on Deming Way. I've got overall aerial of the site here, and you can see Deming Way winding through here and Discovery Drive. And the site is actually highlighted in red down here. And I remember from our last presentation that I didn't give enough context. So this is, I was gonna take a shot from further out, but I thought this probably
Well,
covered
you
it.
can see David is smiling. People are all smiles. Good job.
We're gonna learn from our mistakes, so.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna just
He's
bring it
a,
in a little bit.
Avid fan of the regional context map, yeah.
I'm gonna bring it in just a little bit closer to show the area. It doesn't show real well overlaid on the aerial, but you can see this is the actual footprint of the building, the outline of the building and the parking. We got the Fiskers Building here, Mead and Hunt, Gilda's Club to the west here, a courtyard by Marriott to the south, and then across there's some health generations and UW Health and Micro CPA. So again, this is Deming that's winding through here, and the hotel would be fronting on Deming. Go to the next, zoom in a little bit closer. Didn't like the way this one turned out because it's hard to see where exactly the building footprint is, but I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of what's existing here. So we've got this drive coming through to Gilda's. This is actually a part of the Gilda's site, and there is an access easement on this site. Let me just go to the next one because
Is that a private road?
it's part of the lot, so it must be a private road, but there's an access easement that's for serving these lots across it. The hotel fit on the site. We can get parking around, 3/4 of the building. There's not enough parking for the hotel on this site. In talking to, Livesey is the owner of the property. They also own Lot 2 of the CSM that's just northwest of the site. And they were interested in developing this for additional parking for the businesses in this area, possibly for meat and hunt. And something is in the works to work out where we would put some parking on this site and have I think it was a lease for. Yeah, like a 99-year lease. A lease and able to use parking on this site to get the parking we need for the hotel. I think maybe you should talk about the brand a little bit and what we're proposing here. I've
Okay,
got-
Luke, let's hear about the brand.
New concept brand that Intercontinental Hotels Group came out with called Avid. And essentially, I don't know how much familiar you guys are with other properties that have been going on in Madison, but there's a new product over on Mineral Point that opened called True by Hilton. So Hilton came out with their product. About 30 days later, IHG came out with theirs. It's kind of the exact same thing because that's what those guys do. But what happened was back in the early 90s, Intercontinental, well, before it was Intercontinental, Holiday Inn came with Holiday Inn Express. It was supposed to be a limited service property, kind of a better version, fast, efficient service, in and out. You want a nice clean bed. And what developed over the last 15 years was those became products that were very successful. The Hampton Inn, the Fairfield, the Express became brands that went from a mid-scale version and worked their way up the chain to a upper mid-scale. And as kind of the way things worked, people wanted more and more and more. So the breakfast became larger, the rooms became better. And as I was here 4 months ago telling you how nice this Holiday Inn Express that I'm going to do down the road is, what happened was those products became a better, larger product than the original intent of the market was to be. And so what created was this gap between kind of the upper mid-scale and the economy. And so what you'll see here are some of the older products that were built in the 70s, 80s, 60s that kind of littered around Madison, Middleton, East Side. Madison have become tired properties that probably need to either go away or need a facelift. And so what these franchises came up with was, hey, we're leaving this huge market. There's a gap now between this upper mid-scale and this lower economy scale that no one wants to, not as many people want to stay in. So we need a brand new concept, new hotel that hits this kind of a mid-scale economy market that we just left by these older properties. And so in comes True by Hilton, Avid by IHG. So they did their studies. The really smart people that went to smart schools figured out that there's this huge market of people that, hey, I don't want to pay 140, 150. I'm in and out. I'm a business traveler. I'm a weekend kind of just quick deal. I don't need a fancy breakfast, but I want a clean room. It doesn't need to be big. So what they wanted to do was get back into this market with a brand new build instead of reflagging an older repurposed property. And what ended up happening was over the course of the 6 months when it came out, the first article 3-4 months in was True became the fastest growing hotel chain in history as far as franchise starts. 30 days later, 45 days later, of course, Holiday Inn came out with their press and they said, Avid is now the fastest growing hotel chain in history. And so what was kind of determined was the market had a need for this. It's, I hate to use the word economy because it's not nice property. Of course, it's brand new, and I've actually personally toured the prototype facility down in Atlanta. It's a very nice looking, clean, fresh room. They just took all the frills out of it. The Express that we're doing has a really nice pool, large fitness room. No pool in this one, smaller fitness room. The breakfast offerings are more of a grab and go, granola bar, fresh fruit, grab a milk kind of thing. The Express, now we're cooking things, and it's just an upscale deal. So basically what they've said is, let's take this product that's really good, Express, Hampton, Fairfield, very successful, too successful for its own good. Let's get back to the original kind of core idea of what we tried to do in the mid-90s. So out they rolled these products. Locally, they broke ground within the last week or two over on Broadway in a development in Monona with a product, an Avid product. So you'll see that probably open within the next 10 to 12 months. So that'll be a central location. Nothing to do with me other than that's the product. If you see any news clippings, similar or same brand as what I'm proposing here. What they wanted to do also was land costs increasing, suburban sprawl. We wanted to take this product and put it on a smaller piece of land. They've focused on 1.5 to 2 acre sites. They've focused on old restaurant sites that needed to be remodeled that were on small pieces of land. So they've really condensed the site and tried to make it really efficient. We got as efficient as we could. We still ran out of a little room for parking, but in the Livesey deal that I worked with, they had another user fall through for this site. Didn't go to contractor, was under contract, didn't go through. We were able to get our property on this site, and then the parking across the street, across the Gilda's access, was future parking for the overall development of some of the other Livesey-owned buildings. So we struck an agreement to do overflow parking, which will probably never get used, but just to have there where we develop the parking, lease it from Livesey, and it carries with our contract. So kind of the recap of it is a very similar product to the Express that we're doing down the street, but a just kind of less frills, new product to replace where maybe some customers will go. Not that we want to pick off other stuff, but if you look down, West Madison has a lot of properties that are older hotel properties where this business is going. This would be a newer version for those guests to stay in an efficient new property.
Yeah, the colors look nice. So how does it compare to, for example, Fairfield? And is it in the same range or a little bit better?
It would be one step below a brand new Fairfield. I expect to compete competitively with a 10 to 15-year-old Fairfield. Where they're really, with all these brands, if you look, of course, the franchise guys, they just want to make more money, so they throw out a lot of different brands. So the spaces are very overlapped in the products. And so what you'll see here is a brand new Avid will compete with an older upper mid-scale product, where if you put two new products, if it was a brand new Fairfield, brand new Express, it will compete at the step below the new ones. But then at the existing ones that have been around for a while would be probably a competitive product.
So this site was flooded, so you are going to do something?
We will, if things go well and this progresses to a usable site and to the approvals of the point we've looked further into it, then we would look at kind of what happened there over the last month. And we've already got a bunch of information from Livesey, from CGC, kind of the local go-to soils expert. And we did a bunch of work on the Express site, which is just down the street, to kind of figure out what's happening there and what we need to do to change. Or it turned out that we didn't need to do much. But as this continues to develop, I think we'd look at and see what we need to do differently and what we can do to protect the site on the flooding side of things.
Yeah, if you look at Mead and Hunt, they didn't have any problem. They were all, even they're close to the confluence pond, and I guess they didn't have any issues. So I guess.
It's because they're all engineers.
Yeah. So they had built a little bit higher. So I guess you can learn. So
Yeah.
I mean, don't put your mechanicals in the basement.
No basement
right, I mean-
in this one, which helps.
No, that you're not.
Okay, other questions?
So,
Yes.
my
go
questions had to do with height and parking to start. It's 4 stories. How does that, it's about what the others are in that area?
It's about what,
So it's not, I mean, the same concept. And then if this were, I know we go through this every time we do a PDD, if this were a regular, outside of a PDD in a B3 or whatever it
It
is.
would be a 3-story or 35 feet, whichever.
Right, no, how many parking stalls are required per room?
I think it's 1 per room and then 1 for every 8 rooms, I think.
This
Is that what
one-
the,
I
do you
think
have the,
that's-
I'm looking it up.
otherwise, do you have the PGM on a hotel?
Yeah, so this is 1.05, so this is only,
We came in under that slightly on the Holiday Inn Express site. It was one of our, one of our requests.
Yeah.
And we'd be looking kind of at the same thing on this. I mean, we can put more parking on the, I just picked a number. We're at a similar, no, we have fewer rooms and a little bit less parking than the Holiday Inn Express site. So I kind of kept the ratio similar, I think.
As long as there's alternatives or.
Right, as long as there's others. It would be nice to see what the most recent PGM has for this type of hotel. I don't know if you have that sitting in your office or, I mean, I can find it somewhere, but.
It's our ordinance requires 1 parking space for every lodging room, plus 1 additional space for each 8 units.
So this would, this is underneath that, this is a little bit below.
We're a
that.
little below that, yeah. We're, that would be about 107 units or 107 parking stalls.
Most of the parking demand in hotels is at night, right?
Correct. I think
I mean,
too.
just looking all around the businesses, it's, yeah.
You implied in your talk that you don't think that many parking spaces are needed. Is that
I think that kind of the trends have gone to more of the rideshare with the Uber and the Lyft, just a lot less of parking in general. So what we've seen is just the parking, well, the last couple of years, the market occupancy has been high, but the parking actually at the hotels have been less. And I think just kind of economically driven or demographically driven, that there's just been a lot less cars in the parking lots than, say, in 1995.
The thing that worries me a little is that the site is, 99% solid, covered. I see you've got few islands of grass, of green or landscape in the parking areas. I wonder if we couldn't make that a little bit more and have a little less coverage on the site, and if that means accounting for some more on the overflow site, so be it. But it seems awfully tight.
And that's why I was asking for the most recent PGM, because I know that parking at hotels has gone down. A lot of old parking ordinances still have the old standard.
And ours is.
And
old.
they kind of have that overparked hotel, which is a sea of asphalt instead of some landscaping.
so you guys will look into it, right?
Yeah, remind me, PGM, acronym
Parking
for-
Generation Manual,
Okay,
Yep.
ITE, yeah.
that's a Greg Held architect question, that's off my realm, but.
We would, I guess first we would look at that, and we would also look at what the brand recommends, and then we would
Yeah.
kind of say, well, what do you guys want? Because it's a question of how much we really want right on the site, close to the building. Everything else is overflow for those few times a year that you're
Right.
100% booked, or, I think we wouldn't want to put any more on here than we need to, but we want to get as much as we think we're going to use on a consistent basis, just to avoid the overflow if we can.
I think, and not that this is the best example because it's a one shot of the year, but our busiest hotel week of the year, or even you go 2 busiest, one's Epic, the next one's World Dairy. And everybody knows there's shuttles all around town. Parking lots will be empty, hotels are slammed. And that's not, like I said, not the norm, but I can work with the franchise guys and say, hey, nationally, what have you guys seen? Have you seen the trend? We know the trend has gone down, but what are their requirements? They kind of throw a stock number in there, and then if we change it based on our site, they'll let us kind of get creative and we get waivers. But I can check with them to see if they've, what they've seen on their last developments.
I think what you're hearing from me and David, and I don't know who else, is that there's a very, some flexibility in reducing the parking requirements
You'd like to see my friends at Olson too and do a little more green in there, I think, is what I'm hearing from David.
I think having green, I agree with them, having a little bit of green, it just, changes the whole environment
Yeah.
and makes people happier, it's, yeah,
I mean, you're gonna have to do some stormwater management there anyway, I don't.
yeah.
That was my question. Given
Yeah.
the amount of impervious area you have, I'm wondering what your concept is for
Well,
stormwater management.
Our understanding to this point, and like I said, this is still concept, is we were told that the stormwater was handled at the development level for this particular
I
site.
think you're gonna have to do something on site though, too. I mean, I could be wrong. Did you talk to Greg, or to Gary Huth? Or,
No, we just were talking to the owner of the property.
I could be wrong about that, but I think there's probably gonna be something. And we have a maximum impervious too on the site, so we can look at that though.
Does their maximum impervious apply to the PDD?
We have it within the PDD.
In the PDD, okay.
I just can't remember right now if it was, might be 80%.
One other question, as part of parking, are you anticipating providing any charging stations for electric vehicles?
My last 4 properties, I have added them, so that has been something I've worked with Tesla, and depending on which program you pick, you can have a couple Tesla ones and a couple, whether you get them from them or someone else, I'll say the right thing, but generic brand ones that
Right.
fit the other cars. So that would be something that we'd be looking at, similar to what we did on the other site down the street.
Thank you.
And I take that back about the impervious. This Discovery Springs might not have it, but we still have, I think, stormwater to do and infiltration if we can, so we can work it out with that.
The only other question I had in terms of the orientation of the building, I realize this is kind of a suburban office complex, so design is already a little, but all the other, your building, I realize it's this way on your map, so that you can get 2 rows of parking in. But if you look at the other buildings around it, if you could rotate it 30 degrees to the north, so it looks more in line with what the
So
other.
what they actually did there was, believe it or not, on purpose.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, see what you're
Yep.
saying? If you look at the main page here and you see the corner, what they came out with, they tried to come out with a more modern design. I think every hotel across the board has been that horizontal look, you drive in on the side. What they try to do here with the trend going more towards urban is they took that corner as the actual lobby, so they wanted to make it a more walkable. I know I understand this isn't, we're not in a super urban location. I think if I was in Fitchburg, everybody would be clapping for me to say it's like walkable. But the idea was this corner piece of this hotel, and that's why they have the Avid sign, I guess the front glass windows where you're looking out towards the street. The idea of the concept of the hotel is to put that corner where the activity is out towards the street, so you're walking the neighborhood or whatever the location is.
Most of the design elements on the building kind of come together at that corner, and that, that's kind of the approach coming up Deming Way is why we cited it there. We did try a few other options for the site. Some of them got us a little closer to the gas station to the north than we wanted to be, and this was kind of the compromise that we settled on. But it was kind of driven by this corner design and having that right up front.
If you look at the back side of it, so it kind of gets plain on the back, and that's why they focused everything around that corner, was the intent of the franchise development of this particular property.
Yes, David? Oh,
No? Yeah, I was picking up on the same thing. It looks like it is parallel to the little bit of street that it is parallel to. On that front edge.
It's parallel to the north property line. The long side of the building is parallel to the north property line.
No, to the Deming Way.
Yeah.
What I'm
Well,
talking about.
it's-
The building at that point is.
It's perpendicular to Deming.
Yes, the face of the building is parallel to the street. Yeah. What are those 2 lines that cross the road? On the footpath that comes from Deming Way to the front door?
Handicapped.
There was a connection, sidewalk connection to the sidewalk, the public sidewalk.
What are those 2 lines?
Here,
It's the connection to the sidewalk.
right, coming across here,
Yes.
just a striped area for a crosswalk,
So it'd
going,
just be
and then going
striped
out to the public sidewalk.
Would just be striped on the ground.
On the pavement, yes.
I mean, on the elevation, on the perspective, you show a broad pedestrian area, right?
Oh, a continental crosswalk? Yeah, and this is actually the prototype rendering from
Right.
from corporate. So there could be some differences between them, but this is actually, in this area is the drive up to access the lobby. You know, the short-term parking here. Wrong direction.
Other questions, David? This is the discussion and feedback.
No, just the site coverage and any landscaping, and like I say, the water problem has to be dealt with.
And I agree 100% that if we had done a landscape plan for this and put some color on that, it would look a little bit less dominating. I mean, there's no doubt there's a lot of parking on that site, but if we'd have colored these areas in green and plopped some trees on there, I think it would have given it a little bit more.
There's some credit for being able to read the drawing.
Well, we're really just coming here to get some feedback to know if this is something that's worth pursuing.
Right.
Yeah.
So he knows he can go after the site.
We're
Yeah.
pursuing.
Yeah, I think in terms of the, oh, sorry, were you- in terms of the use, the height seems in accordance with what's there. It's gonna be a nice hotel cluster, a good potential B-cycle station site.
Yes, Wayne, you had something.
No, I asked my questions earlier.
Oh. Jennifer?
How many rooms did you say that the hotel would have?
95.
And will they be, double rooms, single room, like a
There's-
king-size
there's a
bed, or is there a
mix.
mix of different types proposed?
Yeah, it'd be, and I'd hate to guess on the exact breakdown, but basically a 50-50, one queen versus two queens. Which is a similar, I talked about this last time I was down, that the kings perform well during the week with the corporate travelers, and then the two queens on the weekend are more advantageous for the weekend travelers, soccer, hockey tournaments. My friends down the street are redoing that hockey rink, so we'll have some of them stay there eventually.
Yeah, that's actually looking, well, I haven't gone inside, but they are busy, so,
Looking really nice, yeah.
okay.
Just
Yes,
one more question. Are you gonna be applying for TIF?
We didn't want to get too far ahead of it. I think it was a discussion that once we get into the soils report, which Livesey's done some work on previous stuff, and we haven't dove into that, but it would be something that we would maybe look into if it warranted it.
And so the rough value of a property like this is probably 12 to 15,
I would probably say 8 to 10.
8 to 10?
Yeah, and the other express property in that 12 to 15 value.
Okay.
Yeah, so, an idea, like, when we start talking, this will get into the value, but room rates and ADRs and RevPARs, the intent is that this property will perform $10 lower than an comparable express in the market, which then eventually drives it that, if that express is in the $12 million range, this would be in a $10 million range.
It doesn't give you a lot of
Yes,
wiggle room
Jennifer.
on the TIF.
I guess to ask the planning staff, is there any opportunities to share parking with adjacent businesses?
Good question, yeah, that would be something that maybe they could look into with, the parking.
Okay.
Livesey, and, well, Gilda's, yeah, they're already sharing the drive with.
In fact, the hotel to the south,
South.
is that the Marriott?
yeah, the courtyard.
Would there be a curb cut so that you could go between the two parking lots, or a complete barrier? Do we want people to be able to?
I can't imagine my friends across the street are gonna be happy that we're, building this, or potentially building this, so I don't think they'd be, open to us opening up our parking lot to theirs. Not to speak for them, but
Yeah, that may be a hard
the
sell.
casual conversation was, why are you building hotels next to me?
I mean, I guess I'm just wondering if, in terms of the stormwater issues and maybe even the green space, if there'd be a way of siting the building and the parking that you've created up on the northwest corner in that other lot, maybe there's some of the stormwater issues in providing some green space in the other area, or maybe between the two hotels. That might be enjoyable for people.
Idea. And maybe the parking could be right across the street at Spectrum or the UW buildings, because Gilda's is gonna be busy at night when you're gonna be busy, but the ones across, the office buildings won't be likely, and that's just across the street.
So were you saying that we should transfer more of the parking to the northwest to allow more green space or stormwater, or?
I suppose you'd have to do different site, you could almost, I don't wanna say it this way, but turn your back on the gas station by siting the green space in between the two buildings, the new hotel and the south hotel. Or you could create a green space that would be up in that northwest quadrant. There isn't, parks per se in that area, and it might end up being a nice, place for people to stop on the bike trail, if they're staying there at the hotels and going to Gilda's Club, a little public.
On this area here, to the, yeah.
I guess I'll point out, I don't own that, and that's a Livesey property, so he's got that teed up for parking for all the businesses. So my only, piece of getting involved in there is, obviously it's a very small site, and they're trying to infill it, and they found their last thing didn't work out. They felt this was a very good fit for it, but obviously the fit is tight because it is an infill piece. So looking at it as a highest and best use kind of on this acre and a half, they were willing to let me, encroach over to that space. But I think that's always been designed as a parking lot.
Other questions? Okay, so you guys have enough input now? That's all we are supposed to provide, right?
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, on to the item number 4. Seems like simple.
Sure, and this is on the golf course, but they're simply changing the lot line and the proposed drainage easement. Our engineering staff is okay with it, subject to a few minor changes, but it also does need the formal release of the easement and application of a new one. So we'll have to go to our council also, but
Okay.
bringing it here as an SIP modification and changing that lot line.
So
The net
this,
effect is to reduce the size of lot 2 and increase the size of lot 1.
Right. But they're still within the minimums required, and same for this.
What's the use or proposed use, at least as it's zoned now?
It's single family.
Single family,
I don't know
okay.
if there's any, do you want to
You
come up to the
guys-
microphone?
Oh, I didn't see the street name.
This property is located in the community of Bishop's Bay, the 4th phase. And these two lots are originally Lot 140 and Lot 141, and they're kind of on the east end of the 4th phase that overlooks the golf course. And basically what we're looking at is taking 12 feet on the street side of Lot 141, which is shown as Lot 2 of the CSM, and taking it into Lot 1, and then 24 feet on the south end, or the rear of the property, just to widen the entire site of Lot 1 and making Lot 2 a little smaller.
so these are going to be single-family homes, that's what's planned?
Correct. Yep.
Okay,
So we're not looking at any change of use or altering anything density-wise. So it was platted originally for 2 single-family lots, and it still is 2 single-family lots.
pretty good-sized lots, isn't it?
Within that neighborhood, of the golf course fronting lots, they are probably on the larger end still.
Okay.
Yep.
Is the intention to realign the drainage so that it hits that inflection point on the east side?
my understanding with how it was originally approved and platted is that the easement follows each property line.
Yes.
And so we're proposing to move the drainage from the old property line to the new property line. So it wasn't necessarily because of any topographical issues or existing grade. It was primarily to follow what was done with the original platting of the subdivision.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I'll move approval.
Okay, all right, so it's,
Subject to, is that okay, to subject to engineering staff
Yes.
and
Yes.
legal, the easements?
Thank you for that clarification.
so it's item number 4, specific implementation plan modification to relocate common lot line and easement shared by lots 140 and 141 by certified survey map, community of Bishop Bay, St. Anne's Drive. So, all those in favor on this mo-
Who seconded, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Wayne made the motion, but I didn't second. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so the motion has been made, it has been seconded. All those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Go and build, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now we are on to big thing, item number 5.
Exciting.
Comprehensive plan update discussion. Now we are actually discussing.
And I realized I forgot to, actually, I looked this memo up this afternoon, I realized I forgot to make copies for you guys, but thought we could walk through it on the screen. It's not super exciting, but, you know, we thought we'd start at least with, the first 2 chapters. I think, Jennifer had asked for a little bit of clarification about, excuse me, about the purpose of each, chapter and the highlights, and so that's what this does. Introduction obviously is talking about what the purpose of the plan is, what the history of our planning efforts are in the city, how we structure the plan, and then our public participation plan. I looked over, which I've done many times in the past, but, you know, for the introduction, just some of our past plans going back to 1961, and was just struck by kind of the overall themes that keep coming up. Citizens understanding and actively participating in planning for Middleton's future. That goes way back, you know, 50-some years, almost 60 years, actually. We planned an orderly growth and development, attractive place in which to live and work, improve the quality of life for every Middleton resident, analyze and assess the needs, the future needs of the community. In the 2018 update, one of the things we have in the first 2 chapters is the overall goal: enhance and protect the high quality of life in the city of Middleton, and using the following criteria and standards. Preserve and protect neighborhoods. One of the things that means to me, and I know you all talked about it maybe today, maybe the next time, is that doesn't mean it's not gonna change. It just means we're looking at what's an appropriate change for that area. Because certainly, things do change. Protect and enhance the environment, provide efficient and effective public services, integrate multimodal transportation opportunities, and facilitate sustainable growth and preservation, and compact urban form. So the introduction, there's a little bit of stuff that has to get added, but just to explain why we're doing this, and it's more for the future, somebody looking back, okay, where are we at? Issues and opportunities is somewhat that way as well. What's a snapshot of the way that the city looks today? What are some of the demographic, we do have to do demographic trends, but where are we at today with employment characteristics and population characteristics, and what's the projection for the future? Issues and opportunities chapter has the history of the city, and it has the census information. There are tables that are missing. We do have the ones we do have, which also need to be updated. They're a couple of years old. Well, obviously we used the 2010 census. Could you just go back to the? It also looks at the city's strengths and weaknesses, and we can go through that if if you want to, or you can just, we may have things to add to that. Some of the things that are weaknesses, if you wanna move to that. Increasing lack of affordable housing, or continued, I would say, lack of affordable housing, the traffic issues. You know, we have our own development, but we're also a funnel for traffic, lots of different directions. From the west, headed down, from the north, headed through the city down to the campus and state capitol and state office buildings. Transit is more limited. We also have an issue, and I think we talked about it at the last meeting. How do we maintain the balance of land uses that we have? Because most of the land that we have in our growth area is more suitable for residential. But historically, we've had at least 42% of our tax base in non-residential uses. So how can that be accommodated and jobs be accommodated moving forward? And much of the community is low-lying and contains soils that can make development difficult. The other issue that we've wrestled with for years is we only have one public access point on Lake Mendota, and is there an opportunity to increase that, or increase the use of that? And then lack of a central community center to serve all ages, that's come up over and over. So, and then, of course, there's lots of good things. I don't know if you want to go over those or not.
That's
but
my other sense.
we tried to list all of those as well through the years.
Is it okay to ask some questions about
Oh,
the?
I'm just trying to
Absolutely,
highlight
yes,
these and that,
yes.
and then you guys can discuss.
And I don't
We
wanna
are open for questions.
Yes.
So one question I have is there a future year, plan horizon year?
We're usually looking out 20
Yeah.
years, and Kurt, you can correct me if I'm wrong. We usually are looking out 20 years.
That was a question I had too.
Okay.
I think we should state up at front, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
That this plan is
agreed.
really designed to cover the years 2018 to
38.
2038,
Okay.
2040.
Want to go 2040?
2040 is
Easier.
usually,
Okay.
And that will provide a vision and time
Middleton
horizon.
2040.
I also wondered
There you go.
if there's an opportunity to talk about resiliency of the infrastructure.
That's good.
Security, certainly with some of the things that Middleton has had happen in the last few months, I think things like that might be important to
Okay.
have a vision about.
Those are good additions. Yeah, that's exactly what.
Can you go down a bit? Keep going.
That's all my.
I'm sorry,
I have
that's
in
the
my
beginning,
mind.
I beg your pardon, okay.
You can make it, try
Can
and
I-
make it bigger.
Can I follow on, Jennifer?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I have a lot of students who,
Down.
one of the things they do is they read comprehensive plans from around the state, and this is what I do for research too. And it's, if you really want to be bored sometime, Van, read 20 comprehensive plans in a day. And
Oh,
score them on a research score sheet. But one of the things that's an emerging trend that I think it'd be good to bring in as kind of a central theme is this phrase that you see around the state and around the country of incorporating health in all policies,
that's good too.
and the idea of incorporating equity in all policies. So really looking at everything through that, resilience, safety, health, and equity lens, and kind of highlighting those as themes
great.
of not just sustainability, but sustainability also means resilience, promoting active living, public health, reducing disease burdens through active living, food systems, and then equity in terms of, right, it's not just affordable housing, it's transportation access,
Right.
job
Access to
accessibility.
jobs.
Yeah.
That's good. Those are good themes. We can work on those. It's very good.
Where you had the compact urban form comment,
Yes.
which I think it's further.
I think it was just part of the standards that we were talking about.
About compact urban form. Strikes me that the protecting neighbourhoods, enhancing environment, public services, transportation are all part of that.
Mhm.
So I would question whether compact urban form goes ahead of
Oh.
planners.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're sort of subsets of it.
Okay.
I was actually kind of looking at it the other way. I see the preceding ones as more outcome-oriented and promoting compact urban form as a way, as a is a method of getting to some of those larger goals.
Where do you want it? Somewhere where it is, or in the middle, or the top, or?
Something to think about.
Okay, yeah, we can try to address those and maybe as we, and I
Like,
think we do.
What I
have-
was trying to get at is, I think it'd be helpful, for instance, when you're saying promote compact urban form, what is you trying to achieve in
Okay.
promoting
Okay,
compact urban?
sure.
And it seems like that relates more to kind of land use preservation and preservation of natural areas and such.
Perhaps Commissioner Paulson could share the top scored
Yeah.
comp plan.
Yeah, well, let's hear.
So-
Well, it
And
depends
you
on what
just see how they
dimension.
phrase it.
But we're not
So-
just doing cut and paste.
Yeah,
Right, I mean, no, but what Wayne is getting at is that when we talk about goals, policies, and objectives in comprehensive plans, some of them are more vision-based goals.
Yes.
right.
And some of them are more process-based.
Goals, and some of them are outcomes. I mean, we can say preserve and protect neighborhoods, and that's something everyone agrees to, but what does that mean? But compact urban form is a little more specific, because you can measure number of acres converted to,
Sure.
I mean, you could talk about, how much expansion of the urban service area boundaries and stuff. Whereas sustainable growth and preservation is more of a big picture vision.
On the first line of that section, 2018 update, you open the brackets, but the quote marks, but you don't close them.
Oh, I don't, yeah, sorry, that was supposed to be actually at the very bottom, after compact urban form, because that's actually where, I just took it right out of there. I was just trying to get it highlighted, so it should hopefully be closed in the plan itself, the chapters. Sorry about that.
Actually, Kurt touched on a term I was actually looking more for. To me, a comprehensive plan is about painting a vision for what a community aspires to be. And I think it helps to create the vision, and then the goals, the objectives, and the methods are steps towards achieving that vision.
Like to, next time, have a discussion about that vision? We have a fairly late agenda for the next time, and maybe try to craft that or review that, the vision?
Sure.
Yeah, I think we need,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I guess that's actually pretty important. You're putting a comprehensive plan, and it should start somewhere with a vision.
Well, yeah, we've kind of used the overall goal as that,
Mhm.
but, yeah.
And I guess I'd be curious if the public involvement that you have done up to this point has brought you to some of those items that you've listed here in terms of that vision. So that would be good to know.
Yeah, sure, and I think I passed it out the last meeting, but maybe not. It was the
A public involvement plan you
public
did.
involvement, yeah.
Yep.
Well, that plan, that public participation plan, but also the comments from those 9 secret sessions. If I didn't, we'll get that to you.
I don't think I have in this
Okay.
I
stuff
don't remember
here.
seeing comments,
No,
but I remember
no.
seeing,
No, I don't think I saw them either, so.
We'll get that to you.
Yeah, I mean, just having a kind of a good sounding overall vision doesn't necessarily forestall a conflict at a future date, but it helps shape the organization of the plan, how each chapter kind of contributes to that vision. Right? I mean, a comprehensive plan as a document is kind of this hybrid thing, because on the one hand, it's high-level vision of what we want our community to be like. On the other hand, it's more like a strategic plan of, this is what we actually intend to do over the next 10 or 20 years. And so it's helpful if you can each section refer back to how does enhancing bicycle access tie into overall vision and goals.
That's good.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the bicycle.
Spokesperson.
Oh, I thought you were looking at the mark, I didn't know. that.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, a lot of times, I think the process is the valuable part, the public participation, the discussion here, just getting to that, and then it's kind of the finished document is a compilation of all that process, obviously. And I think the value is in those discussions and that, so.
How far into discussion of outcomes do you get?
In the overall plan?
In the overall plan.
That's, it's really not, I guess, some of the, policies kind of talk about, how to implement those goals and objectives, and, is that kind of what you mean, or, I guess I'm not.
In the previous existence, when I was living in New Zealand, every policy had to have outcomes,
Oh,
right?
And that is another trend in comprehensive plan of kind of formulating, maybe not 47 metrics, but even in the business world, they talk about measure what matters. Like, what are some indicators that we would know that we've been successful, right?
Okay.
Or, I mean, you can put those in there as, 20% increase in bus trips, or,
What are the
Sure.
measurables?
okay,
I think I like that.
the problem is, so once Wisconsin's law really started to bind that every action you take has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, what we're seeing across the state is that people are writing comprehensive plans to be more vague,
right,
so that therefore everything you do is consistent,
right,
which is not actually what the point of the law was.
right.
So they're just playing games, and, you got to be truthful as much as you can. So
Right, I mean, it should be a way that, in staff reviews, when the commission reviews, the citizens look at it, it's kind of a clear statement of what we actually think we want to do, recognizing that the world's gonna change. If something like Epic comes along, that might change the plan, or a flood, or, right, I mean,
Right,
it's not a blueprint, because the world might change.
right,
But
not
it's,
a blueprint.
it's a guideline. Sorry, I'm waxing theoretical about comprehensive plan.
That's okay.
One thing I see, Eileen, is that a lot of that you have in the memo I find actually very helpful, and it seems like a lot of that is what I was actually looking for in the issues and opportunities element, because I was looking at the state comprehensive planning law, and it says that element is supposed to address objectives, policies, goals, and programs. As I see it currently written, that chapter, it's primarily history and context, as opposed to identifying objectives, policies, and goals.
I've seen plans written both ways, and both can work. In one, you have either in the chapter 2 issues and opportunities, or a concluding chapter, you basically summarize all the goals, policies, and objectives from all the chapters in kind of one centralized place. Which is real looking. The other is to say, well, they're in each chapter anyway,
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Thematic.
On that point, I noticed that it mentions that there's factors from the past that could shape the future, but it's not really stated clearly what those factors are. Yes, it's a railroad, or it's a marshy land, or there's expanding potential. Things like that are kind of in that history discussion, but maybe if you bring it into where we are today and some of those things that are shaping that future, that will help kind of get you to those factors will be more clear.
The other ones that I've seen as being successful hit you right up front between the eyes with something.
Okay,
Whether that's the vision or whether it's some known outcomes that are really going to change things, or something that sort of says, hey, let's go further and read this.
sure.
Because it's terribly easy to sort of become absolutely logical. Part 1, part 2, part 3,
Yeah,
part 4,
it's true,
part 5.
yeah,
yeah.
The good stuff is usually then at
Chapter
the
7.
end of it, but
Right.
nobody reads it.
right. No, that's a good point. After 37 years of writing staff reports, it's kind of like, cut and dried, so we'll try to jazz it up. Nobody's gonna wanna put it down, I'm telling you. Those are good, those are
Well,
good points.
one way you could do that is tell the public what it is we use it for right in the beginning. I mean, it's in the laws and things that we know as the Plan Commission, but it's not really clear what the public would use it for. And you could just restate that. And then the other thing on page 4 of the intro, you've got the existing adopted plans and initiatives or adopted with this update in parens, identify which ones
That's a good point too.
are specific to this update that we're approving and recommend, or, you know, saying
Sure,
these are
that's
moving
good.
forward. That's not clear.
I was wondering that too, especially, you know, to the extent that some of these, I guess would be kind of more formal elements of the plan as opposed to others just providing some context or something.
Right.
It helps to identify what the real standing of these different pieces are, especially as it relates to future decisions needing to be consistent with.
Okay.
So what do you guys think of, we are not there that about the build plan, it's 10 years old, I guess, we have to do something about it. I don't think we can just use it as it is.
I like it as it is, with guidelines that would be written by staff and presented to you all for discussion. But if you don't like it as it is, we can certainly look at that.
Well, you don't think it need any updating?
It has a lot of information in it, and you know, those properties themselves haven't changed. There's been a little bit of redevelopment, but not a lot. And it's up to you guys. You guys are the ones that are gonna be adopting.
So
the
one of my
plan.
main objections to the build plan is that they come up with height limits that have no bearing, at least as I understand, to economic reality.
And that's why we'd be looking at design guidelines
Right.
that would have different.
And so, again, and I know this came up in a context where we were looking at it, but not, which is, right? I mean, if you're gonna do structured parking in an urban infill setting, then a 3-story height limit is never gonna generate enough income to pay the debt service on the parking. So, I mean, a 3-story building in a corridor is fine if you're doing surface parking. But so, I mean, those are some of the issues that'd be nice to kind of settle down.
Okay.
I mean, the other issue is how visionary do we want to be? Do we want to put up a concept that says, wouldn't it be great if someday University Avenue had a dedicated fixed route transit system, BRT or light rail down the middle? I mean, that's probably not going to happen under current plans at the
Yeah.
region and the county, but, I mean, do we want to do a little visioning and concept plan of
Sure.
what that would look like?
But you have to, I mean, you know, where do you think we are going?
Right. I mean, you can have two types of the plan, right? Where do we think we're going if things keep going the way
Yes.
that they are, or we adopt the county plan? But the other is visionary.
Mm-hmm.
If money and time was no object, wouldn't it be great if University Avenue, to me, was, don't quote me on this, right? Only one lane of traffic in each way, down to 25 miles an hour, and a BRT line with transit-oriented development right through the middle.
Yeah.
And everything's 4 to 6 stories,
Yeah.
building.
That's only one solution, though, to the to the issue of providing transit down the street,
Right.
right? So one is
One possible,
putting it in the middle,
yeah.
Sure.
right? Closing the other lanes, doing all those things that you talk about. Another is just providing bus lanes along the outside,
Right.
right? Or whatever, so.
I have in my mind this beautiful picture of the Cleveland BRT system, designed by Mr. Ring. I've been using pictures when I give talks on transit-oriented development, and I didn't even realize they were from him.
That's cool.
Oh,
Well, one of-
David, this is an
that's
opportunity.
very cool. One of the things that,
6.5 miles of bus rapid transit
nice,
down the central.
With millions of dollars in investment following.
wow, that's cool. Well,
Mind you, it happens to have the Cleveland Clinic along the way,
oh,
which
yeah,
helps.
yeah.
And all the art museums at the other end of the line.
But that reminds me of something that we've also talked about adding, and that's the technology issue. The way that those changes are shaping, the you know, planning issues and land use.
I'm for it, yes.
Well, because you think about it, the rapid bus transit or, you know, autonomous vehicles or, you know, how is that gonna change the streetscape or the, street cross section, so there's so many layers of that.
But that's where it'd be nice to see the plan, because obviously that's one of the major corridors that's gonna need some change in attention in the next 20 years. So having some, at least vision work of what we would like
Yeah.
to
that's
potentially
good.
see there, and what the trade-offs are. I
Good.
mean,
Yeah, I actually would like,
South and
how do you
town
tie?
together,
Yeah,
you know, because Because that's a river, or, you know, that divides us. How do we bring the?
How do we bring the two
together?
sides of the city?
That's a good point too, or it's a river.
Yeah, it will be good that if we could have a more of technology along there and co-working spaces, because it will be, you know, right on the main popular route and easy to come and easy to go from. And you could even have a combining the housing with the, well, the mixed use, so.
One thing we could do when we look at trends is to identify, you know, Middleton has internet throughout, access throughout, where's the fiber optic cables that are necessary for different types of technologies, those types of things. If you'd wanna think through some of those opportunities, that might be a way to think about, map the community in a different way.
No, I think we really need to think differently and hard for the university corridor.
We have the University Avenue corridor plan. What other neighbourhood or issue plans are there? Perhaps
Yeah.
you talked about this last week.
Sure, we have the, build plan for the Allen Boulevard corridor, which actually was adopted probably back in '05 or '06. And we have the,
Parmenter, right?
right, the Parmenter neighborhood plan and the Pheasant Branch historic concept plan. Mark, can you think of any others that we have?
No, we have,
Well, in
Yeah,
essence, the FUDA plan is,
The FUDA is a future urban development area study, so we have that, which
that's adopted?
it's adopted through, or accepted. The issue will be, do we want it adopted as part of the comp plan too? There was a lot of visioning with that, you know, what types of densities and what the communities look like. We have the urban greenway study, which I think should absolutely be part of this.
Yeah.
And we do have a downtown circulation study, which was never formally adopted. That predated the Walker parking study on the, so those are schools. We don't have a lot of neighborhoods.
And then we would need something to tie all of them
we have
together.
our Parks plan, and Conservancy plan.
Yeah,
and stormwater
Parks plan concern.
Right, we'll
Right.
put those into, you know,
Airport.
As appendix or whatever.
ped bike plan, yeah.
But, I mean, not to tie this into any particular project, but the idea of kind of pre-planning a corridor is that it'll come to some consensus amongst the plan commission that then is approved or not approved by city council, where we kind of have some guidance as to this is the type of development we want here but not over there, and this is the type of development we don't want here but we want over there. So that it makes it clear to developers, this is where we want. Like Jacob Klein always says, we said in our city's strategic housing plan is an
That should
adopted
be-
plan,
yes,
should be
yes,
added,
should be in here.
right? This is where we want affordable housing, right here, because it's near transit, it's near jobs. So he could go and get a site and buy it and build it, right?
Yeah.
But to help developers know ahead of time, we're unlikely to rezone or have a high density here, so don't, right, or we want it here, so then when we say we want it here and someone comes forth, the presumption should be that we approve it.
Yep, and that's good. I'd also like to spend more time with the intergovernmental agreements that we have, because I think what we have is very unique in the area.
Yes.
You look at the Springfield plan, and those maps that we have, the two that are with this issues and opportunities, you know, they show the impact that our intergovernmental agreements have. Springfield, the majority of their township is shown to be preserved, and we support that, and we've limited our growth area to a small area. We think with the infill and redevelopment and everything that's happening in the increased densities, that should provide for 40 years worth of growth, but, you know, lots of communities wouldn't do that. So those are, and then with Westport and our joint planning with Community Bishops Bay, we've essentially set the urban-rural, you know, transition there, and then the town of Middleton also, so we'll beef that up too, so. It's exciting, it's just hard to get it all done with because the three of us are
Right,
the
right,
ones
right,
that are
yeah.
writing it.
But it's fun, isn't it?
It is actually fun. So, you know what,
Speaking for ourselves.
Oh,
No, it's fun to think about the future, not just to review a existing
Exactly.
plan, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Not taking anything away from you or your staff. Have you considered having a graphic designer have a look at what you're producing?
We haven't because we don't have a budget. We did have a contract with Vanderwall and they prepared our maps for us.
Still needs some editing, but I think you're talking about formatting and
Formatting,
presentation.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree, that's, yeah.
Yeah, and that would be wonderful, but we just don't have a budget, for it. So,
So maybe some of the interns, right, perhaps?
well, maybe if they had the
Yeah,
right
could
skill
look into
set.
it, yeah.
I
Got a
didn't hear
lot
what
of-
the mayor said. What
Well,
did the mayor say?
What,
Said that maybe an intern.
Yeah, some of the intern coming from your department, Kurt.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, in terms of more of a graphic design,
It's
maybe.
communications and marketing in that area.
We can, I mean, I have no idea how much that would cost, but we literally have no budget for this.
Oh, is that something we need to address, is budgeting for some help for you?
So, I mean, we used to have a statewide grant program for comprehensive plan. I was on that review panel, that's why I read all these
That's why
things.
you read them.
But that dried up, and so a lot of people are, I mean, doing it in-house,
We were
which
the-
you don't have a lot of
Right.
resources, so.
We were the first, I think, one of the first communities to have a planning grant. We got it with Westport and Springfield and Wanakee. So we did have a joint plan in our 2006 or preceding the 2006 one, so we did have it, but, yeah, you're right, there's no grant opportunities. We can talk and see what we can.
That's what I was thinking, you know, I mean, I've seen some that are like what we're seeing here. There are others where 2/3 of the page is all this stuff, and the third column is explanations, things
Oh,
along the way,
sure,
you know,
sure.
smaller script, smaller
Sure,
text,
I've seen some like
No,
that too.
lead you to other
Yeah.
bits of the plan, you know,
Yeah.
sort of,
And
tie
maybe,
it all together.
and
so
maybe
that
there's something we can do,
document.
ourselves with that, I don't know.
Perhaps so, yeah. I
That's a
mean,
good, yeah.
I would hope that some kind of thinking about the presentation goes forward. Yes.
One thing I would say is there's a rich community in the Madison area of technical writers who are very good at providing some help with polishing things up and
Sure, sure.
use some of those in projects at work.
Oh.
I mean, the other way I've seen communities do it that is somewhat interesting, again, it costs more money, is the plan itself is kind of a technical document designed for staff and commission, but that you produce something like a poster plan, which is just a large poster that just outlines a couple of the maps, lots of pictures,
I love
major
that
bullet
idea.
points, just so that you can show
Yeah.
it to a community and say this is, or even make it as a brochure or webpage.
And something like this is the center part or one of the big components of the
Helps,
poster.
well, and it helps people understand
Exactly.
what's the vision, but how does each part fit in?
I really like that idea.
I like that too, because
Executive summary, but like
who's going to
graphic.
read this, you know?
Who's gonna read it?
The citizen isn't going to go through all of this.
Planning geeks, but
Yeah,
not
but,
everyone's gonna read it all.
But if you have you know, and that way you covered, you know, both the bases, so some need this and the others need to, you know, to inform them what the city's vision is and where we are going,
I
so.
really do like that idea.
And also, I think we probably need to prioritize here what comes, you know, what's more important. We touched on so many issues, so.
Like the plan that we've got in front of us right now, you know, is that visible when it's reduced to, you know, vertical page? Right? You know, I hate foldouts. you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take that map and you can reduce a lot of the categories to, you know, this is the employment area, this is the kind of residential area, this is the green space area, to show people the,
Yeah,
Otherwise,
The
all
city
those
view kind of-
colors.
yeah. Well, the city view is
Look-
supposed to be more of a
Right.
overall.
city view looks more like a future zoning and land use map.
Mhm.
But the regional context map shows, right, that we're landlocked, we want to promote a compact urban form, so we have
Right.
one area that's really the growth area. And then the rest has to be infill. And to help, I think, I like the larger context map to kind of, again, reemphasize this point. We've got to accommodate our future employment and population forecasts. And we can accommodate the, either by plowing under hundreds of acres of the town of Springfield, which we already have plans that we can't do, or accommodated at higher densities in the new neighborhood, and then some mixed-use redevelopment in existing areas, which would have to be, I've seen it on other plans where those kind of opportunity nodes are somewhat identified.
Yes.
What are the prior, I mean, where would they be?
Nice.
That's kind of what I was looking for in like that chapter two, the kind
Okay.
of issues, goals, and efforts. Like, it's talked about, here's the history of Middleton, but here's kind of where we are right now. We've kind of reached certain constraints, and now it's an issue of how we deal within those constraints for continued development and where and how we prioritize that.
And you can do it with, graphically with arrows or, dotted areas or something that people can't say, oh, look, you're taking my house.
Right,
If you-
right.
if
Big-
you-
road going right
big
through my
bubbles,
building.
Yeah.
If you look at the, this is both a compliment and a little inside joke. If you look at the Van de Waal Plan Factory maps, because they've done half the plans in the state.
Yeah.
They do have those beautiful regional context maps with the arrows pointing and the kind of big picture on one
Yeah, that's true.
map that just kind of tells people, This is the
You
vision.
can tell this came from Vanderwall, just, setting those arrows.
I've read so many Van de Waal plans, and
And then they got just those bubbles.
they're all good, but they tend to
Well,
take the same approach, which is good.
well,
I'll try to find some examples to show
I
you.
don't know, just putting those arrows and bubbles, I don't know.
No, it represents the thought that then you
The
write
thought,
is,
right.
the thought shows how we fit in a regional context. Are we a compact urban center? Are we more of a suburban center? Are we more of a small town? It really, I'll have to show you some. They do a good job with that.
I noticed, Mark, you had some trends that you were trying to show. I'm curious too, on page 5, at the very top, population and demographic information. Will those things be added to the write-up?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm curious if there's anything unique about the trends in Middleton, like, the aging population, baby boomers will, live in place, and we need to think about different accommodations. Things like, I think, Mayor, you had mentioned, we have a bigger daytime working population than we do an actual
We do.
city population. So what type of trend will that lead to in the future? And, will that continue, or will it be different? And how do we plan for some of those things?
And, recently, some people have started asking, do we need more development? And what kind of a development do we want?
Right.
So, and I guess
Right.
we got to answer that, so,
I have a lot of neighbors that work from home,
yeah.
and,
Yes.
they're younger families and things like that. So what, some of the trends that may, as people are working out of their homes, what are the things that might
Yeah.
affect our community and what we plan for in the future?
And we did talk a little bit about that at the January meeting, the joint meeting on Saturday morning, but we do need to add it to that.
So, I mean, we have to deal straightforwardly with what the citizens are asking is whether growth is too fast. So, I just looked up the numbers from our 2006 comprehensive plan, using the DOA, Department of Administration forecast from the year 2003. We're already past our 2025 forecast. And then the forecast that Mark has, which is the 2013. DOA only produces the forecast every 10 years on years that end in 3, so we don't have a new one, right? We're already past our 2020 forecast for that. So we have to do a kind of a revision of what the forecast is, because the forecast does kind of drive that. You take future population divided by household size, is how many housing units you need, and then you gotta figure out where to put them, at what density, right? You can put 100 over here, but that's at half an acre, that's 50 acres of land as opposed to one building on a acre side.
Right.
So that's, right?
That is one trend that is, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, nationwide, that we're also experiencing, that's smaller household size. Our household
Yep.
size has gone down every decade. So.
And like Jennifer said, a lot more people are working from home. I was just at one of the meetings in Madison, and there are companies in Chicago, and
Oh, wow.
and he's working right here from Madison.
And I think that's part of all of the technology issues and how they shape land uses and transportation and.
Yeah, this AI and machine learning, it's happening. It's here. It's changing what we do and where and how, and that's what we need to start to address. So.
Yep.
And it's going to, the pace is faster and faster now. It's just, I mean, to be able to predict
Oh,
what things will be 10 years from now
know.
is not an easy thing, so.
right. But we can-
What ties into that Greater Madison vision that you hosted, right? Is
Yeah.
the region itself is gonna add 150,000 people in, was it
In
20 some years?
Right.
Yeah.
So, as a region, it's the question of, if we don't accommodate them in existing urban service areas,
Mm-hmm.
that's Madison, Middleton, Sun Prairie,
Pittsburgh.
Fitchburg,
You're gonna-
Monona, et cetera, then
Where do they go?
you're gonna get more sprawl, more
Yeah.
traffic.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think going back to even, when Dan Ramsey was the mayor starting in the 70s, I think that's what the city, and actually when I look back at the plan from the 60s, I think that's what the city of Middleton has done. We know there's gonna be growth pressures, and where do we want that development to happen? And further, what do we want it to look like, So I think we can continue that description within the comprehensive planning process.
I do want to put in the plug with the mayor about the survey that's available at Greater Madison Vision. They are doing a survey between September 12th and November 12th, and invite everyone on the commission to respond to it. It's there's some mixed reviews of the effectiveness of the survey and what it's trying to measure, but it's still, we're encouraging 10,000 people, or hoping for 10,000 people in the county to take it, to share priorities in these themes, basically technology, population, society, environmental changes, and what the futures are, the 4 alternative future concepts that have been designed, wanting feedback from people. And I found it actually quite educational along the way. As you read and take the survey, you can hit pop-up buttons and say, okay, I want to know more about this. So it's a very interactive format. It's a different type of survey than we're accustomed to.
What the participation has been so far, Mark?
I do not. In terms of like where they were hoping to be.
How many?
It's over 1,000. I knew it was over 1,000 within the first few days, but I know Wanakee schools are having all their students in high school take it, for example. So that's going to be obviously 1,000 or so. But yeah, they're trying to get all populations across the county metro area to.
We need lots of them from Middleton so that that data is useful for us. I took it. It's like Mark said. It's pretty useful. Yeah.
Still on my format, Kate, are you producing a DVD?
We did in 2006. What?
I said, what are those?
Now you just put it on a webpage.
It's
gonna be on the web.
Yeah, it is on. No, these are fabulous comments, you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to look
We can
through
find a
them all.
VHS format too, perhaps.
Well, so you like to keep, you think you got enough input now, or should we keep going, or time
Well,
to?
if there's more, that's great. Otherwise, I think I could see a kind of a go up your sleeves and do a work session at the next one.
Okay.
I guess
Schedule.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, we would like to, I don't think we're gonna make the schedule to get it adopted by the end of the year. I think there's still more work to be done, so, I think added each meeting and working on it, and when people feel comfortable with it, we can set a hearing. Mike Davis would really like us to finish it because we're 3 years beyond when we started the process, but, you know, I know he also wants it to be a valuable document, so I think if we just keep working at it, we'll take all your comments, to heart. You know, come up with something that.
Okay, so the next step would be to incorporate some of our comments, maybe tell us a little more about the structure of the document, how it's going to be organized overall, whether it's a vision document or there's maybe a tier or different types of approaches that you're drilling into at different parts, or maybe linking to for different reasons.
I heard
Talk about
tonight
it.
all the themes that were mentioned about equity and health and food systems, and I mean, all these things,
Okay.
wrapping that into a new, I think that's, yeah, I think we have to start with that,
I
or at
think
least
so
revisit
too.
that next time. I was drafting some ideas here too, and making it snazzy, not just, you know, a vision statement, not having it be, you know, something mundane.
Yeah, yeah.
Something prepared to go, wow.
I have the word forging.
Yes, I like the
This is
word
not a
outcomes,
standard,
yes,
Yeah.
standard
I mean,
plan.
yeah, let's
I have the
have
word
equity.
forging.
yes.
Right? We disagree on that, anybody?
How do you
I didn't
measure
hear what you said.
What the hell does it mean?
How do you
Right,
measure
right.
equity?
Yeah,
How do,
right.
Yeah, it's fine to say something, but if you,
What kind of business you're trying to attract?
right.
you're just talking in the air.
Right, right. It can't just be, we want more of everything,
Yeah, it's.
and everybody's gonna love each other, and,
And sing Kumbaya
yeah,
pretty soon.
I mean,
Well, Kurt, based on what you said, we are going to probably get higher proportion of the people out of those 150,000 which are going to coming to Middleton. And that's the 8 times 8,
no, not 150,000 coming to Middleton.
no, I said higher proportion of that.
We'll have less than
Then-
10% of that.
Pardon me?
We'll have less than 10% of that.
Less than 10%? Okay.
If we had more than that, I would, if we even had that much, that would be, we aren't prepared for that.
Well, the Kurt was saying that whatever we projected, you know, we are way ahead of that, so.
But that's
Right, but we
the
are,
DOA way of forecasting, and there's a
Oh,
very
okay.
particular methodology they
Okay.
use, which, I mean,
the
I
school
can get
district,
into, but we don't wanna
the
get into
school
it here.
district struggled with this too. They had to redo their population estimates, their forecasts, as part of their facilities planning process, which I served on. And even then, schools started this year with more people than they expected. So, you know, we are obviously a very desirable community. We have a lot of infill happening in Middleton, where people are buying homes in older parts of the city, and they're having families. They have families. So that's a
Right.
trend that I think, you know, there's obviously formulas for that Mark Roffers uses. I think we're still ahead of those
And
because people want to live here because of our schools.
And
and
Well,
our
you're
historically-
starting to see neighborhoods, you're starting to see neighborhoods turn over.
Yeah.
It's a generational thing.
Yeah, the older
Neighborhoods are
neighborhoods,
starting
yeah.
to turn over.
yes,
Where you might have mom and dad and one kid left at home, they're moving to something smaller,
right.
young families moving in. You see it in my neighborhood all the time. I'm like the old man.
Well, yeah.
You said like,
I mean, one way to provide housing for families is actually to provide that housing for seniors, for people to move into, so that then they open up
Exactly. You're opening it up then, right? Yeah.
Okay, so Eileen, you got plenty of input now. It looks like these guys are anxious to go home.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, need a second, so we are adjourned.